Welcome to the Overrated Experience. I'm your host, Kyle Blondin. Happy New Year, everybody. We're December 31st, one day away from a brand new year. And glad you could join us here on the Overrated Experience Sports Betting Podcast. The Sports Betting Podcast is for the square bettor out there looking to have fun, put a few dollars down, maybe new to betting, maybe just does it on the weekends. Somebody may be learning for the first time. This is your podcast. This is the community for you. This is us trying to get better. And you know what? We're going to make a few New Year's resolutions here. I know one of them for me is to try to track each of the bets going on this year versus in previous, where I kind of build a spreadsheet and give up after a few days. It's a lot to track. But I also maybe putting too many wagers down, that makes it hard. But we'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress throughout the podcast. So today we're going to look at many things, including obviously the NFL picture going into Week 17, crunch time, heading into the playoffs, some teams jostling for position, other teams really just running out the course of the season. We're going to talk about the value we're going to find there. Big day today, same day. You might already listen to this after the results are in, but college football in the U.S. Big two semifinal matchups for the college football championship are set today. One being TCU. TCU is Texas Christian University, takes on Michigan. Now that's a huge game. TCU wasn't expected to be here, but they did make it. They had a great season. Did lose on their last game of the year. However, they got voted in. They are 8-point dogs. They were 7.5-point dogs earlier. So that's a big game for them. And also later tonight, the defending champion Georgia Bulldogs take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Georgia is a -5 favorite in that game. Georgia is pretty much the closest team to an NFL team you're going to get in NCAA football. But I'll give you a couple quick thoughts before we leave the air on those games. Very heavily betted across, obviously, south of the border. Even up here north, but south of the border especially. But the Overrated Experience, you can also follow us on Twitter at Overrated, EXPER2. That's the Overrated Experience Twitter account at Overrated, EXPER2. Follow us, give us your comments, thoughts, picks, whatever you want to say. Even if your story about your bad beats, your big wins, some tips for our listeners, whatever you want to do, please join the community. All right, so as we dive into it, just a few news and notes. I know that folks in Ohio must be very excited because Ohio, as of January 1st, 2023, is joining the relegated sports gambling market. The quirk here, the funny part about this is that Ohio State, like I mentioned, is taking on Georgia at 8 o'clock tonight, Eastern Standard Time. However, they will not be able to place a legal bet until midnight. So the thought is that some of the books, maybe a couple of the books, if this game was to stretch past 12 a.m. on going into January 1st, that you would potentially be able to live play this game. But there was talk that obviously the folks in Ohio would try to finagle where they can maybe push that regulation to start a day earlier. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. But an interesting note, welcome Ohio to the relegated play of sports betting. And just another note, in just the world of regulated betting, regulated betting, is that there was a story that FanDuel, or DraftKings, this wasn't a story I was going to bring up, just came to mind right now. DraftKings may have sent a promo email to a few thousand folks under the age of 21, which is a no-no. So I believe that the Ohio state government is somehow looking to find DraftKings $300,000 for that error. And it really brings to light that, yes, there are positives of the regulated gaming industry, but there are also, very, very restrictive nature of the government, whether it be Ohio, potentially fining DraftKings for an email that was sent out, or the Ontario government here in Canada, where not liking mixed martial arts, specifically the UFC, and some of the rules that they felt they weren't stringent enough for coaches and associates to the fighters' camps to place wagers. So they banned each of the sports books in Ontario for accepting bets on UFC, which is a lot of power. So this is, again, another, whether it be fining DraftKings or not switching off of the January 1st timeline, shows the power that's been provided to the government over the regulated sports industry. So something to keep an eye on, something to really keep, just know your rights, know your rules, and especially when you're depositing money, taking money out, all those sorts of fun things. All right, moving on to another note. I know for myself, I had strictly, as far as a sports book, started to use FanDuel as my main sports book. I decided for my next deposit, hey, let's use 2 sports books at the same time and see if there's value there, because there should be value there, because I can compare the lines, whether it be football, hockey, basketball, you name it, whatever happens. So I have opened up a FanDuel, or sorry, I have my FanDuel account. I also have the Sports Interaction account that there was a promo to deposit up to $500, 50% deposit bonus. And so that kind of encouraged me to do it. I've already noticed some advantages of having 2 books to look at. And that is, for college football last night, the Clemson-Tennessee game, the juice was much higher on Sports Interaction than what it was on FanDuel. So that's where I, obviously made the choice to make the bet on FanDuel. Didn't win anyway, but if I would have won, I would have got a larger payout. This morning, for EPL action, soccer action, Arsenal was better juice on Sports Interaction to place the bet there versus FanDuel, so I placed the bet there. And that's the kind of comparison you do want to start making if you're serious about trying to find line value, and that's a big thing, finding line value. Why would I pay or not receive as much money from one book versus another if I had those options? And I've said this before, but a great tool that us bettors can have, if you download the app BetStamp, which you'll find on the App Store, I think it's on Android as well, but I know for the iPhone, it allows you to pick a game such as, let's say, for example, TCU and Michigan that's coming up in about a half hour time. I can look at the books that I have available to me and look at the different lines available, the over-under and the spread. So I'll give you an example here. So I'm listing Points Books, Caesars, North Star, ProLine Plus, which is the government gambling site, Bet Rivers, DraftKings, FanDuel, Sports Interaction, blah, 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 go on and on. But it also lists the top book for each area. So right now, Pinnacle has TCU as a plus 7.5, or Michigan, I guess if you look at it. FanDuel has Michigan at minus 7.5 versus, Caesars that has it 8 and North Star has it 8, or Sports Interaction has it at 8. So I, as a FanDuel owner, if I like Michigan, I'm probably going to take obviously the 7.5 point points that Michigan has to win by at minus 110 or 112 versus the 8 points at minus 150, even worse there, that I would have to get on Sports Interaction. So something to pay attention to. And also look at the over-under. Look, the over-under on is 56 on Sports Interaction. FanDuel is, what do we got, FanDuel? What do we got? Or ProLine Plus at 58.5. This gives you a better idea how to shop and look for the best line possible. So that is BetStamp, the app that you can download. Good value, free, and something to keep an eye on, and I'd recommend. All right. Just to talk about my own experience, I went to the Toronto Raptor game on Thursday facing the Memphis Grizzlies. And the reason why I bring this up is some of the bad habits that happen when you're at a live event. As a square bettor, you're sitting there, probably a game I wouldn't have bet if I was not at the Raptor game. I'm from Toronto. I also felt the pressure to bet with the Raptors at +4, which was a joke. They got smoked. And also, as you're sitting there and you got the over-unders and unders and, quarter by quarters going by, you start placing more wagers, making that mistake of chasing just for the entertainment value. And it really hit me. I didn't do too well in that game, and that was a result of being at at the game and actually in the stands watching and following along and looking for more action. So that is a square better in a nutshell right there. It's a bad habit, something we as bettors got to get better at, but we can't help ourselves. We're at the game, we're going to place a wager, and it definitely hit me in the wrong way in my pocket. All right, and moving on to talk about the Michigan TCU game, now at +8 on Bet365, 7.5 for FanDuel. I think, here's what we want. At 4 o'clock today, we want TCU to win this game, be the underdog story, to go into the national championship game. But the reality is that when we start narrowing down the teams that these schools that are not the large schools play against, it really exposes the difference in the programs and the skill sets and the depth and especially on the D line and all those things. Just Michigan's closer to a well-oiled machine, a program that has a history, top talent all over the place. So I do see them running away with this game. I hope they don't. I hope I'm wrong. But from a better standpoint, and using my brain versus my heart, I got to say Michigan, if you get that line at -7.5 on FanDuel or any other sports book you're looking at, that is the right play. I have a feeling Michigan's going to walk away with this game. And then leaving it to the next game at 8 o'clock, looking at Ohio State and Georgia. I do think Georgia is on another planet. I think that they will destroy Ohio State. I think this will be a runaway game. There might be value that early on Ohio State kind of stays in it until Georgia can pull away. But Georgia is clearly the best team in the country. At -5, I believe there's value. So I'll be taking the -5. But like I said, there might be value if you let the first quarter play out and maybe Georgia dips a little bit and then hammer Georgia, because Georgia's going to win this game. Georgia is going to win this game. The best value may be that Ohio State jumps out to a quick lead and makes it look like they're going to knock off Georgia. But these college football games feel like twice as long as an NFL game. Georgia will come out on top, and we're going to have a Georgia-Michigan final, which I believe Michigan should destroy the Wolverines, and that's probably the last we'll see of John Harbaugh, who I got to believe at this point is going to jump to the NFL. Where he's going to jump, I don't know, but he's on the verge. He tested the waters last year or the year before and kind of stepped back, but Jim Harbaugh's going to be in the NFL. There's just too much money to be made, too much, just his brand too. He's been in Michigan a long period of time. It's done for him there, and he can go out on top saying he got to the championship game, but that's about as far as he's going to take it. All right, so this is a busy Saturday. A lot of things going on: NHL, soccer, college football, NFL picks for tomorrow. I got bets going right now, as you probably do on a Saturday. I got a hockey game, Columbus, Chicago, over 5.5. Chicago's on a power play with 1:37 to go, and they're not, I need a goal here so that Columbus can score an empty netter. Just things need to fall my way, which did not. But what I will say, there was a college football game today. Iowa State Buckeyes taking on the Western Kentucky. Now, a lot of the players on each side of the ball were holding out because they're going to be entering the NFL draft. Now, the scary thing is that the Western Kentucky Iowa game had a 31.5 point spread. Or sorry, not point spread, over under. And guess what? As a square bettor myself, I get suckered into such a low total, and I'm usually all over it. I did take 2 bets in that game, and that was Iowa State and Western Kentucky to go over a 31.5 by itself, but also took a teaser with Alabama to win straight up, with bringing the total down to 27.5. And no, 27. It was 25.5 or 26.5, very low. And by the first quarter, no score. These teams look terrible. The announcing team trying to prop up Western Kentucky. Quarterback is terrible, inexperienced, can't no accuracy whatsoever. It's like this is his first snap. It's deplorable what kind of product they put on the field. Their offensive line is horrid. And punt. Get to the second half. You get a touchdown. Nice touchdown by Iowa. 2 pick sixes. 21-0 going to the halftime. Looking pretty good. And then they put up zeros. They put up donuts. to end the game. The second half had zero scoring, and it just tells you some of these teams are just horrible. They're just good enough to move the ball almost to the half. Man, I can't even think of the term football, to midfield, and then eventually punt. Disgusting, terrible football. I lose and get suckered in once again to a low total that I knew I should have stayed away from. Hey, lesson learned. Probably do it again. Maybe make that a New Year's resolution going into 2023. And just before we get to the main part of the show, which is going to be our NFL look at for Week 17 tomorrow, some NHL plays for the Saturday night that, again, maybe looking back on versus looking forward on. But an afternoon game with the Montreal Canadiens visiting the Washington Capitals. Good parlay opportunity with the money line here. Washington minus 190. Actually, I parlayed this game with the Vegas Golden Knights and Predators over 5 on Sports Interaction. So, I really like Washington to take control of Montreal. Montreal's look very poor going into Tampa Bay and Florida. If they somehow win this game, that just tells you the NHL is very unpredictable to bet, because Montreal looked horrid in these 2 games. There's no way a team like Washington should even have an issue with the Montreal Canadiens. They suck very badly. So go with that. Also, a game I like to have a few goals in is, and I would bring this down to an alternative play, and I would bring the Arizona Coyotes take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Minus 150, if you bring it down to 5.5, I do believe there'll be at least 6 goals in this one. I also did think that the Chicago-Columbus game this afternoon, 2 teams have nothing to play for, would have been more of a shootout like it was when these teams last met in Chicago. But the game has ended 4-1. Obviously, wouldn't have won this at 6. That game just finished. Also, I think a big play here, I think Colorado hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The over-under is 6 at a plus 100. I know that the Leafs tend to be in games where they're, really stringent in puck control, but they do have the horsepower, the firepower. In Colorado, it looks like Nathan McKinnon has come off the injured reserve list. I don't know if he is going to be playing, but I would take my chances in the over 6 on this one. There's a heck of a value, like a lot of good value on that. That's where my money will be going. So that's Leafs, Avs, probably the best play in the NHL tonight, over 6. All right, let's get to the National Football League. A lot of stories changing with teams that are in playoff contention. Jacksonville, as an example, has taken over the lead in the AFC, was it Northwest, what the hell it's called, but they've taken over a divisional spot. Carolina and New Orleans are very much in play, chasing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who look not good at all. And we're going to see how that plays out. But let's get into it. Let's get into the NFL and talk about some big games here. I'm not going to talk about every game, but I'm going to talk about everything that stands out to me. All right. So we're going to talk first about the Carolina-Tampa Bay game. Carolina visits Tampa Bay, and Carolina is a 4-point underdog to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I look at any spread that is beyond 2.5 for Tampa Bay as a no-go. I would tend to think that Carolina, there's value here at +4, minus 110, especially if you look at Carolina as part of a teaser where you take that line and move it to a +10. Tampa Bay does squeak out wins. They look horrible doing it. Carolina, took out, was taken out by the Steelers last, sorry, not the Steelers last week. They did win last week against the Lions, which I was surprised about. But Carolina can play. Sam Darnold's got moving down the field. They got something going here. There's no reason why Tampa Bay should be 4-point favorites to anybody at this time. And I think the value is on the Carolina Panthers. All right, Chicago-Detroit. Now, Detroit, wow. I thought they would walk into Carolina after winning, 6 straight last week, and they just got lit up. That old Detroit defense got sliced through pretty easily by the Carolina Panthers, a team I wouldn't even think of as a high-scoring team. Oh, they're just terrible. They're like a bad relationship. I was on board. I was not on board with them at the start of the year. I got on board with the Lions. I thought, wow, man, you changed your ways. And, at Burn Me against Seattle earlier in the year, kind of left them a while back, thinking, don't touch these loser teams. I got in their hot streak when they were with the Jets, but it just failed me last week against Carolina. I don't know what we're going to get here, but I do know what we're going to get in this game. With the Bears at a 52.5 over-under, I like the over. I like these teams to score points, to light it up. And I would say the over at 52.5 is the play here. Now, what other value is there? Well, interesting stat. I looked at interceptions value, and I looked at Jared Goff. I'm like, Jared Goff, known to throw picks, and he's sitting there at a 0.5 over at plus 160 to throw an interception. And this is why you probably look at the numbers. You look at the numbers and you go back to Jared Goff's last 7 games. He has not thrown a pick in 7 games, which is shocking to me. His reputation as a Ram, an early part as a Lion, was take sack, don't move, fumble, interception, take sack, fumble, interception, whatever in that order. But he's looked like the last 7 games, he's turned it around. Could be the guy that the Lions will want to proceed with going into next year. But so that plus 160, I took it off the board. He might throw a pick, but the data is telling me that 7 games straight, he has not thrown a pick. And since November 6th, he actually had, I think it was 7 in his first games prior to November 6th. So he's really turned it around, protected the football, made the right reads and right throws. So stay away from that. Just thought it was an interesting note. So like the over at 52.5 in that game. Cleveland, Washington. Just a note for folks out there. Taylor Heineke is benched. Carson Wentz is in. Carson Wentz, if you remember, Philadelphia Eagle quarterback on the Super Bowl year that Nick Foles took over. Carson Wentz was actually on an MVP pace before his injury, has really had an up and down, really did nothing more in Philadelphia when he came back. But also, you look at last year with the Colts, he sucked horribly, couldn't go into Jacksonville, do anything. They got rid of him right away. Things haven't really worked out in Washington either, but he does have blips of actually doing something. I think he's in that buy this stock at a high or a low right now because I think he's going to do something tomorrow. I do like Washington -2. So I would take -2 Washington, leave it at that, or you want to tease it to bring them down to +4. I think Washington's going to win this game. Deshaun Watson still struggling I think Cleveland's struggling to figure out what they are right now because they were predominantly a running team. Deshaun Watson's going to have the ball more in his hands than any other quarterback they had. Jacoby Brissett example. So I think they're still trying to find themselves out. They probably need a good training camp to really mesh to what they want their offense to be. I just don't think they're there yet, and I think they'll struggle tomorrow. Going into Indianapolis, taking on the New York Giants. Giants are a 5.5-point favorite. I tend to look at this game as a teaser opportunity, bringing the Giants down to from 5.5-point favorites to 0.5 underdogs, so that all you're really looking at them to do is win. I don't see much fight out of the Colts. They have looked horrible after coughing up 33 points and 30-plus points against the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys. They just get run over by the Chargers last week. Nothing going on. Nick Foles starting, threw 3 interceptions. I think he got sacked 85 times. Maybe that's not an accurate number. But going into this game, Nick Foles is looked at as having 205.5 yard passing yards. I like the under on that. Also, Foles to have, here's a good value. Foles to have at least 1 interception. He had 3 last week. I don't see why he's not going to throw at least 1. So a -165 might be a good value play to throw in a parlay. But I see the Giants squeaking it out. By no means, I don't think they're going to dominate, but the Colts really got nothing going on. Jacksonville, division leading Jacksonville. I think they're on the upswing here. And I think the value against the Houston Texans is, I know it's 3 points. It's a divisional matchup. But I think the Jacksonville Jaguars will have a similar game they had against the Jets, where they will control, they'll win by 7 to 10 points. I think that line is too low, and a perfect game to tease to make them a +3. So there is value there, but also like Trevor Lawrence, 245.5 passing yards over 4 of his last 6 starts. He's achieved that or more. So I think there is value there. Jacksonville's on the upswing, and you'll see them in the playoffs. Miami, New England. Well, if you haven't heard, Tua is now back on the sidelines with a concussion. No idea where he got this concussion against the Packers on Christmas Day, but apparently he was concussed, and nobody knew about it because he finished the game. But, that means Teddy Bridgewater is going to come in. I think this is Teddy Bridgewater. He's built to come in on short notice and be effective, and he knows that he has tons of weapons in Miami to make it, simply get it in the hands of Tyreek Hill. Get it in the hands of Jalen Waddle. Get the ball in the hands of your weapons and let them do the work. He does not need to throw 80-yard bombs. He just needs to get it to the folks that are going to run down the field, score the touchdowns, and just kind of make them look good. So I see, even though that New England is a 2.5-point favorite, why? I have no idea. I think Teddy Bridgewater and the Dolphins go into Foxborough and get it done. So I like Miami at a +125. Take the Dolphins. They got something to play for. They got a lot more going on than New England does. New England is a mess. I don't know. I don't think they know what they are. Their experiment with this, I'm not going to name an offensive coordinator, really has backfired. And I think, the shine on Bill Belichick right now is kind of taking a hit. And I think he needs to recalibrate what over complexity that he brings to the table by not naming an offensive coordinator or using Matt Patricia, a defensive coach, as an offensive coordinator, which makes zero sense for a second-year quarterback. So dumb decision there, and I think Miami's the value. Also Tyreek Hill, over 74.5 yards at -110. Tyreek Hill brings value game in and game out. If he's healthy, he's the go-to guy. He's going to potentially get big chunks every play the ball's put in his hands. 74.5, I think, is a steal. And only low because Teddy Bridgewater has been named the starting quarterback. But he's your guy. He is, to me, outside of the quarterback position, probably the most impactful player in the NFL that is a game changer. Tyreek Hill has proven it week in, week out, season after season, that he is a difference maker. And 74.5 is way too low and probably insulting to Tyreek Hill, to be very honest. All right, as we head into later games, we have, what do we got? What do we got here? Oh, Miami, New England, we just talked about that. Get a flip a page. That's how a book works, okay? New Orleans visits Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a -5.5-point favorite here. Now, what scares me about this one is that obviously Gardner Minshew is he's probably the best backup quarterback in the NFL, and he gives you a chance to win, just like he did in Dallas. However, we're talking about he's replacing Jalen Hurts, who was until this injury, considered the front runner for the NFL MVP. And there's a reason for that. There's something he brings to the table with the run-pass option, his threat to throw, his threat to run. I think it makes a huge difference. New Orleans is a tricky team. I think they're gonna stay in this ball game. I am not going to touch this game. I think New Orleans brings this game down to the wire. Philadelphia probably wins, but they're not going to win it easily. I do think that a great value pick, write it down here, write this one down. Gardner Minshew over 0.5 interceptions at +145. I got to check to see that once again as we're on the air here, if that is indeed what I seen and what I thought. But Gardner Minshew threw 2 picks the other game against the Dallas Cowboys. Why would he not potentially throw another? Play interceptions. Andy Dalton, -140. But Gardner Minshew, +145? Doesn't make sense to me. Again, he threw 2. He's a little wild. He wants to make things happen, keep plays alive. He will throw at least 1. So write it down. Mark it down, write it down, save this timestamp. Do what you got to do, but that's the value right there. Moving on to the New York Jets taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Thank God for the Jets that they got Mike White back, an actual quarterback that can hit a receiver. I think douchebag Zach Wilson is pretty much done. I think he'll make the journey around the NFL in the next 2 years as the quarterback that, we'll see if we can make things work here. It's not going to happen. He's only in year 2. They don't even have to make a decision right now to pick up his 5th-year option, which will be an uncomfortable situation because they won't. But we'll see how that plays out. But Zach Wilson, not so good. But Mike White, solid quarterback against Geno Smith and the Seahawks here. And guess what? I like the over on this one. I like the Jets to move the ball. I like the Seahawks to play desperate because they're obviously on the throes of not making the playoffs. They're pretty much done. But 42.5 in Seattle, I like the over on that one. Also, last week, it did not pay off against the Chiefs, but I do still like Geno Smith to throw over 235.5 yards against the Jets. Mark it down. I think there's good value there. Now, moving on to the San Francisco 49ers and the Las Vegas Raiders. If you haven't heard, Derek Carr has lost his starting job and has been benched for the next 2 games. Stidham is going to be quarterbacking for the Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders. And it's pretty much a desperation move. Jarrett Stidham, it's not like a situation where he's your, future franchise quarterback that you're giving him a look for the last 2 weeks. This is a desperation move, almost like a move to throw Derek Carr under the bus, and Josh McDaniels is, somehow playing a card that maybe separates them from their performance. But I'll tell you what, this Raider team has had a hell of a season from a guy like Josh Jacobs in the backfield, who in a week-on-week situation produces. That should make the passing game much easier, and I don't know how they're executing their offense. Is it Derek Carr or is it Josh McDaniels? I don't know. But Josh McDaniels, I think, his act's starting to wear thin here. He had the same issue in Denver years back when he had his first stint as a head coach. Brandon Marshall, issues, receiver for the Broncos at the time. And it didn't end well. And I think we're starting to see the cracks here. Derek Carr, what are the odds that the Raiders are going to be able to find another quarterback in the next few seasons is going to do what Derek Carr can do for you? I think the play calling and the system that he's been thrown into has contributed to the down season for the Raiders. So go Josh McDaniels, stay Derek Carr. That's my thought. On that game itself, though, I really don't think Stidham is going to really throw for much. I don't have really a play on here outside of like a somewhat like the 49ers at 9.5. 49ers are obviously trying to win home field advantage and keeping along with Philadelphia to try to win that spot. But and they'll lean on the Raiders. Their defense is outstanding. I think they'll win the field position battle. I think they'll win the rushing battle. Everything looks San Francisco's way. And 9.5 is doable, but it's not a big play for me, but that's what I would take. Minnesota, Green Bay, big game. Green Bay's -3. I wish it was 2.5. I think that the right play is Green Bay. However, Minnesota's up and down. They've looked good, they look bad, they look, in games they look bad and then good. So I don't have a lot to play in this one, but I like Green Bay at -3. Sunday nighter, it's kind of somewhat of a weak one. Baltimore is still without Lamar Jackson. Pittsburgh is still hanging around. The Steelers are for a playoff spot after that win against Oakland last week. And Baltimore's a 2-point favorite. I see value in the Steelers here at +120. What has Baltimore brought to the table without Lamar Jackson that they can beat anybody? Their offense is stalled. I think what team knows them the best in the NFL? That's the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin. And I just see value. I think Pittsburgh is on the rise right now. I think Pickett looked good against the Raiders, and I think he's feeling comfortable in finding his weapons. So take that value pick I'm giving you at +120 and take the Steelers. I think that's the play. And then we have Monday, huge game, maybe an AFC Championship preview. of the three best teams in football, in my opinion, the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals are a 1-point dog to the Bills at home. I like this game to be kind of a shootout. 49.5 points. I like that to go over by quite a bit. And anytime you give me a Josh Allen that's below 260 in passing yards, which right now is 251.5, I'll take that all day. I think this is going to be a shootout. Could go either way. And so like the Josh Allen, passing yards over 251.5. Awesome week. Awesome picks. I know they're going to be great. And if not, you can let me know. But that's the story we have. That is the last time you're going to hear from me in 2022. The next time the Overrated experience will be back is next year, which will be next week, but same thing. Next year, the calendar changes either way. Anybody who listens to the podcast, Canadian, US, thank you very much. I wish you the best new year, good results in all your bets, and I hope you had a great holiday. And that is it from mine to yours. Over and out. See you later.